The stars above Korath were calm, but the world below was drowning in fear. The Deathworlders, known across the galaxy for their strength and survival against the harshest conditions, were now facing an enemy unlike any they had endured before. A predator swarm had arrived, a living tide of wings, claws, and hunger. At first, the Deathworlders believed they could defeat the threat on their own. Their people had long lived with storms of fire and skies filled with thunder. Their soil was sharp and their oceans were filled with creatures that could swallow ships whole. To be born on Korath meant to carry scars before adulthood. They were not strangers to danger. Yet this enemy did not break like the storms of their past. The swarm grew larger with each passing day, feeding upon everything it touched. Villages turned silent in hours. Outposts disappeared overnight. Even the warriors who had never feared death now spoke in whispers about the endless tide. In the great council hall of Korath, leaders gathered in desperation. The air was heavy with the sound of crackling fire and the weight of defeat. "We cannot win this war alone," said Elder Vero, his voice rough from years of battles. "We must call for aid, though I know no one will answer." No one wished to argue. They all knew the truth. The Deathworlders had always been respected, but never loved. Other civilizations kept their distance. To them, the Deathworlders were wild, brutal, and unpredictable. They were seen as survivors who lived too close to violence, who thrived in worlds others could not endure. To send aid to Korath would mean sending lives into a nightmare. No ally wished to take that risk. Still, the signal was sent. Across the deep void, a desperate cry left the world of Korath. It was not a message of pride. It was not a command. It was a plea, as simple as it was painful: "Help us." Days turned into weeks. The swarm pressed harder against Korath's defenses. Cities along the northern ridges were lost. Families fled underground. The council feared that silence would be the only reply to their message. Elder Vero himself told the people not to expect salvation. "We must prepare for the end," he said. "We must fight with every breath until the last of us falls." Then, when hope was nearly gone, a strange sound reached the halls of Korath's command. It was the chime of an incoming transmission. At first, the leaders believed it to be a false signal, perhaps interference from the storm-filled skies. But when the voice spoke, every heart froze. "This is Earth Command," said the calm voice. "We have received your call." The room went silent. Many of the Deathworlders exchanged doubtful looks. Earth was known in the galaxy, but not for empire or conquest. The humans were newcomers, explorers who spoke boldly yet walked cautiously. They had no great fleets that could match the empires. They had no ancient power that echoed in legends. They were seen as fragile, a species of short lives and restless ambition. For them to answer Korath's plea was strange. For them to claim they were sending help was nearly unthinkable. Elder Vero leaned forward, his voice filled with suspicion. "Earth Command," he said into the transmitter. "Do you understand what you are offering? We did not ask for pity. We asked for aid against the swarm. No fleet has dared to come. What can your people send that would survive even a day in this war?" The answer came without hesitation. "We are not sending a fleet," the human voice replied. "We are sending a ship. It is already on its way." The council chamber erupted in disbelief. Laughter mixed with anger. A single ship against the swarm? It was madness. The swarm consumed entire cities in hours. No single vessel, no matter how strong, could stand alone against it. Elder Vero silenced the chamber with a heavy strike of his staff against the floor. "You would mock us in our final days?" he asked the humans. His eyes burned with fury. "Do you think Korath is a place for testing your toys? If you come only to add insult to our wounds, then turn back." But the voice on the other end did not waver. "We are not mocking you," the human said. "We know what your people face. We know the nature of the swarm. And we know what we are sending. It will arrive soon. When it does, you will understand. The transmission ended. The Deathworlders sat in silence. Many cursed the humans for their arrogance. Others dismissed the promise as lies. Yet a few, quiet in the corners of the hall, felt something different. It was not hope, nor trust, but a strange unease. The humans had spoken with no doubt, no hesitation, no fear. On Korath, where storms tore mountains apart and survival was a daily battle, confidence without fear was rare. The Deathworlders, for the first time in many generations, felt the chill of uncertainty. Somewhere beyond the stars, a ship was coming. The days passed slowly on Korath as the Deathworlders waited. The skies were restless, the ground shook with the steps of the predator swarm, and the people whispered about the humans. Some called them fools, others called them dreamers, but all agreed on one thing: no single ship could change the fate of a world. Elder Vero stood on the high walls of the capital city, looking at the dark horizon. He had lived long, seen enemies rise and fall, yet never had he felt so powerless. The swarm was endless. Even the strongest warriors were nothing against its numbers. The words of the humans still echoed in his mind. They had spoken with certainty, but certainty was not strength. Then, one morning, the skies lit with fire. From the void above Korath, the human ship arrived. It broke through the storm clouds with a sound that rumbled across the valleys. The Deathworlders rushed to the city walls, pointing to the silver shape that descended from the heavens. It was not large, not like the battleships of the galactic empires. In truth, it looked small and plain, almost fragile. Yet there was something strange about its form. Its surface was smooth, without banners or bright markings, as though it had been built for silence. The ship landed in the open fields beyond the city gates. The ground shook with its weight, though it was not massive in size. A ramp extended slowly, and figures appeared in the light of the lowering sun. The humans had arrived. There were only a handful of them. They walked with calm steps, their faces steady and unshaken by the heavy air of Korath. They did not carry weapons in their hands, though the Deathworlders could sense that they were far from defenseless. At their front was a woman with dark hair tied back, her expression unreadable. She looked at the Deathworlders as though she had been here before, though all knew she had not. Elder Vero approached her with the strength of his age and the weight of his people's despair. His voice was harsh as he spoke. "You are the ones Earth has sent? Do you understand what you walk into? Korath is no place for frail lives. The swarm has taken half our land. Soon it will take the rest. If this is a gesture of pity, then you should leave now." The human woman stopped before him. She bowed her head slightly, not in weakness but in respect. "I am Myra," she said. "We did not come for pity. We came because you asked for help. We brought the iron resolve. It is not mercy we offer, but a way to survive." Vero frowned, his voice sharp with doubt. "This ship of yours looks small. It does not shine with power. It does not roar with strength. What do you expect us to believe, when even the great fleets of the galaxy refuse to face our enemy?" Myra raised her eyes to meet his, and in her gaze there was no fear. The others refused because they saw no hope. "We came because we build hope into our machines. This ship is not made to impress. It is made to end what should not live." The Deathworlders murmured among themselves. Her words carried weight, though they sounded like arrogance to some. The younger warriors whispered that the humans were blind to danger. The elders watched with quiet unease. The humans seemed too calm for a people about to face the swarm. Myra turned her head toward the iron resolve. "It is not like the ships you know," she continued. "It does not fight like your armies. It does not defend like your walls. It was built for places that no one else dared to walk. It was built for enemies that no one else dared to face. And now, it will stand against your swarm. Vero's anger faded into silence. He searched her face for weakness but found none. He felt, for the first time in many weeks, that something new had entered the war. Not hope, not yet, but a force that carried its own kind of danger. The Deathworlders allowed the humans into the city, though many kept their distance. Children peeked from behind stone pillars, staring at the strangers. Warriors followed them with guarded eyes, hands near their weapons. Yet the humans walked calmly, as though the hostile stares were nothing to them. That night, the swarm howled at the edges of the valley. Its countless voices rose into the sky, a storm of hunger and rage. The Deathworlders sharpened their blades, prepared for another long night of defense. Myra and her crew did not join them on the walls. Instead, they returned to their ship. From the distance, the Deathworlders saw the Iron Resolve awaken. Its surface glowed with pale light. Panels shifted across its hull. Strange patterns spread outward like veins of fire. No one could understand what they were seeing, but all could feel it. The air grew heavy, the ground trembled softly, and the predators at the edge of the city paused in their advance. Elder Vero stood on the wall, his heart filled with conflict. He had lived long enough to know when an enemy was strong. He had lived long enough to know when an ally was weak. But never before had he felt such uncertainty. The humans had promised aid not through armies or fleets, but through this single ship. The Iron Resolve glowed in the night like a silent giant waiting to rise. The Deathworlders could not yet decide if they were saved or doomed. But deep inside, Vero felt the stirring of something he had not allowed himself to feel for many days. It was not trust. It was not peace. It was something far sharper. It was curiosity. Morning came with red skies over Korath. Smoke from distant fires covered the horizon, and the sound of the swarm echoed faintly across the land. The Deathworlders gathered on the walls of their capital to watch. They wanted to see if the humans would stand beside them or hide inside their strange ship. The Iron Resolve stood silent in the valley, its surface dark once more. At its base, Myra and her crew walked out to meet the council. The Deathworlders studied them closely. There were only 7 humans in total. 7 against an endless swarm felt like a cruel joke. Myra stepped forward with steady steps. She was not armored in heavy plates like the warriors of Korath. Her clothing was simple, built for movement. Still, she carried herself with the weight of command. Beside her walked 3 men and 3 women, each calm and quiet. They carried no weapons in their hands, but each wore a band of silver around one arm, and strange devices at their belts. Elder Vero moved to greet them, flanked by guards. His voice carried doubt. "You are too few. Even if your ship is powerful, what can so few do against the swarm? Do you expect us to believe you can hold back a storm with bare hands?" One of the younger humans, a tall man with sharp eyes, answered before Myra. "We do not need to fight with bare hands. The Iron Resolve fights with us. Each of us is part of it, and it is part of us. What you see is not weakness, but focus." The Deathworlders muttered among themselves. They were used to numbers, to armies. This talk of a ship and crew as one was strange to them. Myra raised her hand to silence both sides. "Listen," she said. "We did not come to argue. You asked for help. We answered. But if you wish to see our strength, then walk with us today. Stand beside us, not against us. Only then will you understand what the Iron Resolve truly is." Reluctantly, Vero agreed. He ordered his guards to follow as the humans led them back to the ship. The Iron Resolve's ramp lowered, and the Deathworlder stepped inside. The air changed as soon as they entered. It was cooler, sharper, filled with a faint hum that seemed to vibrate through the bones. The walls were smooth, glowing faintly with pale light. Unlike the ships of the empires, filled with noise and bright panels, this one felt alive. The crew moved with practiced precision. Each human took their place at a station, touching surfaces that lit beneath their fingers. Myra stood at the center, her voice calm but commanding. "Linking complete," one of the humans said. Another replied, "Power stable." Their words flowed like water, no hesitation, no fear. Vero felt uneasy. He had seen many commanders and many crews, but never had he seen such quiet unity. It was as if the humans shared one mind, each movement part of a single thought. Myra turned to him. "You asked what 7 humans can do. Watch closely." She gave a single command, and the ship seemed to awaken. Light spread across its walls. The hum grew into a steady pulse. The floor beneath their feet vibrated gently as if the ship were breathing. The Deathworlders tightened their grips on their weapons, though they knew weapons here were useless. On the outside, the hull of the Iron Resolve shifted. Panels unfolded, and drones emerged like silver birds. They hovered in silence, their movements sharp and exact. From the walls of the chamber, projections appeared showing the swarm at the edges of the valley. The predators were restless, thousands of bodies moving as one. Their eyes glowed with hunger, their claws digging into the earth. "Target lock," said the sharp-eyed man. "Drones ready," said another. "Engage," Myra commanded. The drones streaked forward, silent as shadows. They did not roar with engines or fire with noise. They moved with precision, carving into the swarm with streams of light and bursts of force. Creatures fell in waves, yet the drones returned unharmed, darting back and forth like hunters born for this battle. The Deathworlders stared in shock. They had seen weapons before. They had seen fleets unleash fire upon worlds. But this was different. This was not war with sound and flame. This was control, a clean and terrifying design that killed with quiet purpose. Vero gripped the railing, his voice low. "This is no ship. This is a blade." Myra's eyes remained fixed on the projection. "It is more than a blade. It is resolve made into steel. That is why it carries its name." As the swarm fell back, broken for the first time, the Deathworlders felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief because they were saved for another day. Fear because they saw now what humans could build. The Iron Resolve was not a gift of mercy. It was a machine of finality, created not to hold back storms, but to end them. When the attack ended, the drones returned to their bays, silent once more. The hum of the ship softened. Myra looked to Elder Vero. "Now you see. We are not many, but we are enough. Will you trust us to stand with you until this swarm is gone?" Vero said nothing at first. His eyes lingered on the humans, then on the strange living walls of the ship. He knew his people were strong. He knew they had survived where others would perish. But he also knew something else: now humans were not as fragile as the galaxy believed. Finally, he spoke. "I do not trust easily. But I will stand beside you. Show me that this resolve of yours can last beyond one battle." Myra nodded. "It will last as long as we breathe." The Deathworlders left the ship with heavy thoughts. Their enemy was still vast, their danger still real. Yet the humans had shown them a glimpse of something they had never known before. It was not hope. It was something harder, sharper. It was belief that even death itself could be challenged. The first light of dawn spread across the jagged ridges of Korath. The sky carried a red glow, not from sunrise alone but from fires that burned in the distance. The predator swarm had gathered during the night, and now it moved with full force. It was not a scattered tide any longer. It was a wall of hunger. From the highest towers of the capital, watchers blew long horns. Their sound rolled across the city, calling the people to arms. Warriors filled the gates, their armor dark and worn, their eyes grim with readiness. Families were led into shelters beneath the stone streets. Above, the storm of wings and claws darkened the horizon. Elder Vero stood on the wall, his staff planted firmly before him. He had seen war many times, but even he had never seen such a gathering. The swarm stretched farther than sight, an ocean of movement that swallowed the land itself. The earth shook as it advanced. The very air carried its growls. At his side stood Myra and her crew. The humans did not flinch at the sight. They looked upon the swarm with steady faces. Their small number seemed fragile against the vast horde, yet there was no fear in their eyes. Vero's voice was sharp. This is no test. This is no skirmish. This is the swarm in full. If your ship is as strong as you claim, now is the time to prove it. Myra gave a single nod. Then watch. The iron resolve stirred. Its hull glowed faintly as energy flowed through its veins of light. Panels opened, and the silent drones rose once more into the sky. They formed a circle around the ship, then spread outward like a net of steel and fire. The swarm howled. The first wave struck with the speed of a falling storm. Beasts with wings like sails and claws like blades swept down toward the city. On the walls, Deathworlder warriors raised spears and heavy rifles, firing into the tide. Some creatures fell, but the swarm did not break. Then the drones struck. They moved without sound, cutting through the sky with trails of light. Each burst of energy tore creatures apart, each precise strike burning holes through the swarm. Unlike the weapons of Korath, which roared and cracked, the drones fought with a silence that made the slaughter more terrible. The Deathworlders watched in awe. For every creature that reached the walls, 5 more were cut down before landing. The swarm twisted and turned, confused by the precision of the drones. Yet the swarm was endless. It did not flee from loss. It poured forward, climbing over its own dead. Great beasts with armored hides charged across the fields, smashing through ruins and stone. Their roars shook the air. Myra raised her hand, and her crew responded as one. "Ground wave ready," said the sharp-eyed man. "Lock confirmed," said another. "Release," Myra commanded. The iron resolve opened a vent along its underside, and a blast of energy struck the earth. The ground itself shuddered. A wave of force rolled outward, flattening the armored beasts as if they were leaves in a storm. Dust rose high into the air, and when it cleared, a wide path lay empty where the swarm had once charged. The Deathworlders cheered, their voices filling the air. For the first time, they felt the swarm falter. For the first time, they saw a weapon that did not simply defend but broke the enemy's will. But Vero did not cheer. His old eyes studied the humans. They stood calm, their faces steady as if this victory were only expected. They were not surprised at their strength. They had built it with purpose. The swarm did not end. It swirled around the blast, circling the city from both sides. Above, new shapes appeared in the skies, creatures with wings of bone and mouths that opened like great nets. They screamed as they descended, spreading shadows across the city. The warriors of Korath prepared to fire again, but Myra's voice cut through the chaos. "Stand down. This strike is ours." Her crew touched the glowing panels before them. The drones rose higher into the clouds, then split apart, leaving trails of light across the sky. Suddenly, the trails crossed, forming a web that trapped the flying beasts within a net of burning lines. The creatures shrieked and twisted, but the net closed tighter, burning them to ash before they could reach the walls. The Deathworlders fell silent, stunned by the display. They had fought for generations with raw strength and endurance. They had faced storms with nothing but courage. Now they saw another way of war, cold and controlled, guided by minds that had built machines sharper than claws and more patient than hunger. The swarm hesitated. For the first time, the endless tide slowed. The beasts at the front pulled back, their movements uneasy. The roar of their charge grew softer. Something in them recognized a predator greater than themselves. Myra lowered her hand. The drones returned to their base. The glow of the iron resolve faded, leaving only silence behind. On the wall, Vero turned to her. His voice carried both respect and caution. You broke them. Yet you did not chase them. Why hold back, when you could finish the fight? Myra's eyes were steady. Because this was not their full strength. They test us, just as we test them. To end the swarm, we must draw it all out. The iron resolve was not built for one battle. It was built for the storm entire. If we strike too soon, we reveal too much. We will not waste our resolve until the moment demands it. Vero felt a chill. Her words were calm, yet behind them was a weight he could not measure. The Deathworlders had believed themselves to be the most dangerous survivors in the galaxy. Now, standing beside the humans, he was no longer certain. That night, the swarm retreated to the far edges of the valley. The city stood safe, its walls unbroken. The people of Korath gathered in the streets, speaking in hushed voices about the humans and their ship. Some called them saviors. Others called them monsters in human form. Elder Vero stood on the walls until the stars filled the sky. His heart carried a question he could not answer. Had humanity come to save them, or had humanity come to show them what true danger really was? Korath was quiet after the first battle. The fires still burned in the distance, but the swarm had withdrawn. The city's warriors patrolled the streets, checking walls and gates. Families emerged from shelters, their faces pale but relieved. Yet the Deathworlders did not celebrate. They had survived, but they had seen something that unsettled them deeply. The humans walked among them, calm and quiet. Myra led her crew back to the Iron Resolve. The Deathworlders followed cautiously. They wanted to understand, to see the strange machine that had defeated the endless swarm. What they found inside was beyond anything they had imagined. The ship's interior glowed with pale light, the walls smooth and alive with movement. Panels shifted constantly, forming new patterns, displaying unknown symbols. It was not just a vessel. It was a machine that seemed to think. It breathed and moved as if it had its own mind. One of the younger Deathworlders, Talon, stepped forward, eyes wide. "What is this?" he asked. "I have seen many warships. I have seen fleets that burn suns. But this is alive." Myra smiled faintly. "It is not alive in the way you know life. It does not have flesh or blood. But it thinks, adapts, and learns. That is why it can survive where other ships fail. It can face storms that would destroy an entire fleet and still stand." Elder Vero ran his hand over one of the smooth panels. The surface pulsed under his touch. "It feels warm," he said, his voice low. "Is this a weapon or something more?" The sharp-eyed man from the crew, Ryan, stepped forward. "It is both. A weapon and a protector. It is built for places that test survival. It does not hesitate. It does not tire. It does not fail." Vero's jaw tightened. He had faced predators that could crush mountains, storms that could flood entire valleys, and creatures that could strip flesh from bone in moments. Yet the iron resolve made even him feel small. It was not just a machine. It was certainty made physical, a tool that could end threats before they even touched the city. Myra led the Deathworlders to the command room. Here, the controls were strange. No levers, no buttons. The crew moved with gestures, touching the glowing panels, and the ship responded as if it could read their thoughts. Drones deployed from hidden bays. Energy flowed along channels that pulsed like veins. Every part of the vessel was connected, every movement precise. "This ship," Myra said, "was designed for worlds like yours. Worlds where danger is constant, and survival is earned with every breath. It does not protect because it must, but because it understands the meaning of strength. It does not fight for glory. It fights to end what should not live." Vero looked out a window. The valley was still quiet, but he knew the swarm had not vanished. They would return, larger and stronger. He turned back to Myra. And if the swarm returns with full force? Can this machine stop them? Myra did not hesitate. It will. But not alone. The iron resolve is a tool. It is strong, faster, and sharper than you can imagine. But it needs guidance, planning, and courage. That is why we are here. That is why we stand with you. Talon studied the drones as they hovered silently in the ship. They are so precise, he whispered. They move like hunters that know everything. How can humans control such power? Ryan placed a hand on Talon's shoulder. We are part of it, and it is part of us. We train to think as one with this machine. Every decision, every strike, every movement is connected. That is why it works. That is why the swarm cannot match it. Vero's mind raced. He had fought with every tool his people had, yet none had moved with such perfection. Every weapon they built, every strategy they learned, was still subject to error. The humans had removed error from the equation. Their ship was not just a weapon. It was the embodiment of skill and will, made physical. Outside, the faint hum of the iron resolve filled the valley. Even when it was still, the machine seemed alive. The Deathworlders realized they were witnessing something beyond war. They were witnessing a force that redefined strength. It was dangerous, yes, but also undeniable. Myra turned to the council. Do not fear it, she said. Fear only slows you. Respect it, learn from it, and fight alongside it. The swarm will come again, and when it does, we will end it. Not with mercy, not with hesitation, but with precision. That is what Korath needs to survive. Vero looked at her. He nodded slowly. You are a dangerous people, he said. And your machine is more dangerous than any enemy we have faced. Myra smiled faintly. Danger can be a gift, she said. Especially when used to protect what matters. The Deathworlders left the Iron Resolve that day with heavy thoughts. They had survived the swarm, yes, but they had seen a new form of power. One that was quiet, precise, and unstoppable. They knew now that the humans were unlike any species they had met. Korath was still their home, but after today, it would never feel the same. Humanity had arrived, and with it came a dangerous promise. The city of Korath was quiet in the early morning. Smoke from the last fires drifted lazily into the sky. The swarm had withdrawn beyond the mountains, but its presence still lingered in every shadow. The Deathworlders moved carefully through the streets. Their eyes were sharper, their steps slower, and their ears more alert. Elder Vero walked among them, his staff tapping the stone streets with measured rhythm. He had seen many battles, many enemies, and many victories. Yet he had never felt the mix of awe and unease that the humans and their ship inspired. Korath's warriors had always relied on strength, courage, and instinct. They had survived storms that leveled mountains and beasts that could crush cities. But the humans had shown them something different. Myra and her crew walked alongside Vero. They did not boast or celebrate. They moved calmly, speaking in soft voices only when necessary. Their presence was quiet, but it carried power. It was the kind of power that did not shout, but made others aware of their own limitations. Talon, the young warrior, spoke under his breath as he followed the group. I have fought predators that could swallow a man in one bite. I have seen storms that could crush a village. But nothing I have faced is like them. Nothing is like their ship. Vero glanced at him. You are not wrong. Their strength is not in numbers. It is not in fire or speed. It is in control. It is in knowing the outcome before it even happens. The Deathworlders reached the city gates, where the first patrols were returning. Reports came of smaller predator packs at the edges of the valley. Normally, such news would have caused panic. But the humans did not panic. They moved to the walls, examining the terrain and giving simple commands. Their words were few, but every instruction changed the way the Deathworlders moved. They found new positions, set traps, and prepared defenses in ways they had never considered before. Vero observed quietly. It is not just the ship. They teach without speaking much. They make us see what we do not see ourselves. Myra turned to him, her expression calm. We do not act for glory. We act to survive. You have strength, courage, and skill. You survive storms and predators because you are tested daily. But some storms cannot be faced alone. That is why we came. The Deathworlders exchanged glances. Many felt pride in their history of survival. Yet alongside that pride was a deep sense of fear. The humans did not fight like them. They did not strike with raw force or hope for luck. They planned, adapted, and acted as if the enemy were already defeated. Outside the walls, the distant rumble of the predator packs grew louder. The swarm tested the city again, sending small groups forward. This time, the Deathworlders were ready. They followed the humans' commands, setting traps, and using the terrain to their advantage. Drones from the Iron Resolve hovered silently above, cutting down predators with precise energy strikes. The city's defenders were amazed. The swarm had faced death many times, yet it had never faced it with such precision. Every strike of the drones was calculated, every movement anticipated. The predators faltered, confused by the humans' control. They had never seen anything like this. Vero watched from the wall as a group of young warriors moved with the humans' guidance. They were faster, sharper, and more confident than before. For the first time in generations, the Deathworlders felt that survival was not just about brute strength. It was about understanding, strategy, and the courage to follow someone stronger than yourself. By midday, the small packs had been eliminated. The swarm had withdrawn once more, leaving silence in its wake. The Deathworlders felt relief, but it was tempered by a new awareness. They had survived, yes, but not because of their own strength alone. They had survived because of the humans and their ship. Vero turned to Myra, his voice quieter than usual. Your people are dangerous. Not just in strength, but in mind. I respect that. I fear that if Korath ever faces a storm alone again, we may not survive as easily without you. Myra smiled faintly. Danger is not always bad. Sometimes it is a gift. It teaches you to see beyond your limits. It reminds you that survival is more than strength. It is knowledge, skill, and the courage to act when fear is present. The warriors who had followed the humans spoke among themselves. Some admitted their fear openly. Others nodded quietly, understanding that the humans had reshaped their view of power. They no longer measured strength only by who could strike harder or endure longer. They measured it by control, precision, and the ability to act without hesitation. As the sun began to set, the humans returned to the Iron Resolve. The Deathworlders watched silently. They did not fully trust these strangers, nor did they fully understand them. But they had seen what humans and their dangerous machine could do. In that quiet evening, the people of Korath realized a truth they had never known. Strength alone could not guarantee survival. Knowledge, planning, and relentless precision were equally important. Humans were not just a species of fragile explorers. They were predators in their own right, shaped by challenges the galaxy had not yet understood. Vero stood on the walls until the stars filled the sky. His people slept or tended their wounded. He felt a strange mix of respect and fear. Humanity had not only saved Korath from the swarm but had also shown the Deathworlders a new way to understand danger. Korath was safe for now. The swarm had been repelled. But Elder Vero knew the humans' lessons were not just for this battle. They were a warning for the future. The galaxy was larger than Korath. There were storms they had not yet faced. There were predators they had not yet imagined. And now they knew that humans were not to be measured by their numbers, but by the dangerous skill and determination they carried with them everywhere they went. Korath had survived the swarm. But the Deathworlders had also survived the revelation that humanity was something far greater and far more dangerous than they had ever expected. The sun rose over Korath, painting the jagged mountains with a pale light. The city was quiet. The fires from the last battles had mostly burned out, leaving only smoke trails that drifted lazily into the sky. The predator swarm had withdrawn beyond the horizon, and for the first time in weeks, the Deathworlders could breathe without fear. Elder Vero walked through the streets, observing his people. Warriors repaired walls and gates, families rebuilt homes, and children played cautiously among the ruins. Yet despite the relief, there was a shadow in their hearts. They had survived, but they had seen something they could not ignore. Humanity had arrived, and with it, power unlike any they had known. Myra and her crew moved among the people quietly. They did not celebrate. They did not speak of victory. Their calm presence reminded everyone that the battle was only one of many to come. The iron resolve sat in the valley, its hull smooth and shining faintly in the morning light. It seemed almost alive, waiting, as if it knew it would be needed again. Elder Vero approached Myra. His eyes were thoughtful. "You have saved us," he said. "You have fought the swarm in a way that no army could. Yet I feel as though you have shown us more than strength. You have shown us something dangerous, something that does not tire or hesitate. I cannot decide if I should fear you or respect you more." Myra's face remained calm. "You may feel both," she said. "We do not come to be worshipped or feared. We come to act. Sometimes that is dangerous to those who do not understand. Sometimes it is a lesson. Humanity survives not because we are stronger than every enemy, but because we prepare, we adapt, and we do not hesitate when the moment comes. That is what we brought to Korath." Vero nodded slowly. He understood the words, yet he knew their meaning went deeper than explanation. Humanity had arrived, not to play with mercy, but to end threats completely and without doubt. Their way of survival was precise, calculated, and relentless. It was a force the Deathworlders had never experienced before. Talon, the young warrior who had followed the humans closely, spoke quietly. "They fight differently," he said. "They do not act from anger or pride. They do not even act from fear. They act from a certainty that we cannot measure. It is terrifying." Vero looked at him and nodded. "Yes, terrifying. And yet it is also a gift. They have shown us that strength alone is not enough. To survive, we must learn new ways. We must see beyond our instincts and embrace precision, strategy, and knowledge." Myra approached the ramp of the Iron Resolve. She looked back at the city one last time. "Our work here is done for now," she said. "The swarm has been pushed back. But it will return, stronger than before. When it does, you will need more than courage to survive. You will need understanding, unity, and the wisdom to act before danger reaches you." Vero stepped forward. "Will you stay with us until that time comes?" he asked. Myra shook her head. "Our people cannot be everywhere at once. We cannot fight every storm for every world. But we leave you something more important than our presence. We leave you knowledge, and we leave you an example of what can survive when no other hope exists. Remember that, and you will endure." The Deathworlders watched as the humans boarded the Iron Resolve. The ship's hull pulsed faintly, and the ramp retracted. The hum of its engines rose, soft at first, then stronger, as the vessel lifted off the ground. The ship rose above the valley, its presence imposing yet silent. Elder Vero spoke to the gathered warriors and citizens. "They leave, but their message remains. We have seen what humans can do. We have seen a force that does not tire, that does not hesitate, and that ends threats completely. We must remember this. We must learn from it, or we will not survive the next storm." From the ramp of the ship, Myra turned back one last time. Her eyes swept across the city, across the mountains, and beyond the valley where the swarm had retreated. "We do not send aid," she said clearly, her voice carrying through the morning air. "We send what is needed. Remember that. Prepare, adapt, and survive. Humanity will not always be here, but the lessons we leave will last as long as you endure." With that, the iron resolve rose higher into the sky. It glimmered faintly against the rising sun, a silent sentinel that moved faster than the eye could follow. The ship disappeared among the stars, leaving Korath behind. The people stood in silence. Some felt relief that the humans had saved them. Others felt awe at the power they had witnessed. Yet all felt the weight of the lesson. Humanity had not come to comfort them. Humanity had come to challenge them, to show them that survival required more than strength. Elder Vero turned to Talon. "Do you understand now?" he asked. Talon nodded slowly. "Yes, Elder. They are dangerous, and we are lucky to have seen them. We have much to learn." Vero placed his hand on the young warrior's shoulder. "Korath has survived today. But we must not forget what we have seen. The galaxy is larger than us. Danger is greater than we imagine. And humanity is something far more powerful than any of us believed." As the stars claimed the sky, Korath prepared for the days to come. The swarm would return, as it always did. But the Deathworlders now carried a new strength, born not of claws or fire, but of knowledge, precision, and the dangerous example left behind by humans. The iron resolve vanished among the stars, but its lesson endured. Humanity had left Korath with more than survival. They had left them with understanding, respect, and the quiet fear of a species that could change the galaxy by simply being what they were. Korath would endure. The swarm might return. But the Deathworlders had seen what true danger looked like, and they had survived to remember it. Humanity had come, not to save them with mercy, but to save them with certainty. And that certainty would shape Korath forever.